Hey everyone, we're getting ready for the State of the Industry presentation, and we're just trying to figure out what the best place for our periscope is.
My face is the problem. I've been told that before. I've been told my face is the problem. Look at that side. Oh, it's you. Is it?
All right, that's good. That's good. Let me just hear that. All right, hold that, guys. That's good.
Hi everyone, sorry, we're just trying to figure out the state of the industry, where it's best to set up our periscope.
All right, fantastic. How are you? Thanks, sir. You didn't say that. How are you, sir?
I think we found our spot.
You got it.
If there's any time left.
Probably not.
Alright, I think this is a perfect spot, everybody. Here we go.
No, I know. That's why I give 3 minutes. He shows up with 80 something.
Hey everyone, hey, stay with us. We're waiting for the State of the Industry presentation to start here in just a few minutes at 1:30.
We haven't gotten her, so Howard's already saying.
Usually though they have, I don't know if he wants to call us up or what, but I said no last time.
Because we like you in the middle, that's why. There won't be much time for either of you to.
Oh, thanks, Howard. Boys. Thank you. You can root for me. I like it. I'm fans of the
I probably will.
Wholesale. That's right. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I know people are still coming in, but to stay on schedule and respect your schedule, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is one of the many events at Vision Expo, and it's one that I get really excited about. As someone who's been in practice for 41 years now, I think I'm somewhat qualified to comment on change. And you know, change is all around us. I know that's a trite statement, but never more than recently have I seen so much change in our industry. And when I say industry, it really reminds me how dependent we are and how wonderful our relationship with our industry partners are. Not only the three that are here today, but all across the people that we work with. And I think sometimes we lose sight as to how important and how much they provide for us, and more importantly to our patients. So that's something that we should always keep in mind. We're going to go ahead and listen. The people that are here today are very involved in changes that are happening to our profession, the profession of eye care. Whether you're a doctor or a technician, I know we have a lot of everybody here today. We've seen so much go on in the last few years, and the whole purpose of this meeting is to hear about what we think the future of eye care might look like, and the three companies that are involved here today certainly will have a big role in that. So Howard, let's start with you. And many of you have heard Howard Purcell's, he's got a little radio, he taped a webinar, I guess it's a webinar, a radio show, about change in the profession. I've heard it twice now, and it's really very excellent. Howard has a great insight on what's going on. As Senior Vice President of Essilor America, it's always interesting to hear his thoughts. So Howard?
Thank you very much, Kirk. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, thank you for that. I'm particularly pleased to be here with two outstanding colleagues. I feel really honored to share the podium with a couple of people really making a big change in this industry. I've had the pleasure of sitting on the podium before with Holly. We were just telling her, you hang around with Holly, you feel like paparazzi around. The cameras are just clicking every minute, but I'm inspired by her every time I hear her, and I'm sure you will enjoy it very much. But I get to kind of kick things off, so I have the opportunity maybe to give us a view from a big picture. And if I could get the clicker, that would be great. So thank you. As I said, I'm really happy to be here. I got to tell you something funny. So I've never, done this before at a meeting, but I had a chance. I'm happy to be here all in one piece. A little earlier today, I had a chance to skateboard with Tony Hawk. Now, that sounds really great. That sounds really cool, innovative, right? And I used to skate when I was a kid all the time, but it's been a long time since I've been a kid. So I'm happy to be here, all my bones still intact. It was actually a nice thing. Someone decided that if we could skate for 10 feet without killing ourselves, they would donate to our foundation. So of course, anybody who's going to donate to our foundation, we're willing to pretty much give up life and limb to do that. So I am particularly happy to be here. So I thought I'd kind of take things from a high level for you as you start to dig a little deeper into frames and pharmaceuticals and contact lenses and our side, the spectacle side. And maybe just tell you a couple stories to kind of set the tone, if you will, for the rest of the hour. So for me, over the past several years, I've had the chance to hang around with futurists. We were having that conversation earlier today. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to spend any time with futurists. They're really interesting people. And by the way, futurist in this case is not a woman with a big hat and a crystal ball in front of her, right? These are people who predict the future of our business and where businesses are going, and particularly in our business. And I find these people incredibly interesting. First of all, one thing you should know about them is that a futurist In order to be a good futurist, you have to be a historian, which may sound a bit odd, but really to predict the future of anything, be it world activities, be it politics, be it business, you really have to understand what's happened in the past. And I was particularly intrigued by one futurist, and I'm going to share his story with you because I think it's a really good metaphor for what's happening in our industry and hopefully sets us up for the rest of the hour. So he got up in front of an audience not unlike this one, and his comment was, it's the image that you see here, he showed this picture and he said, so what is more dangerous, crossing in a crosswalk or jaywalking? Seemed like a pretty straightforward question. Do more people get killed and injured crossing in a crosswalk or jaywalking? Now, we're all pretty smart people. If somebody poses that kind of question to us, we likely know it's probably not the obvious answer. The obvious answer would be, well, of course, it's safer to cross in a crosswalk. You don't have to be too aware of things around you. You feel safe and secure. You're not taking a big risk. Jaywalking, although you may be mindful of things, is high risk, it would seem. And interesting enough, he shared some very interesting data that showed more people are killed and injured crossing in a crosswalk than jaywalking. So why do I tell that story? Why is it relevant to us? Because he went on to say that he believes that this was a metaphor for the eye care field. Why? Because we tend to cross at the crosswalk. We tend to not take much risk. We feel safe in doing the things we do, so we travel in a way that feels safe, and that we feel we have less likelihood for injury, for fault, for things to go wrong. And his plea, which I would perhaps make the same one, is that as an industry, we need to jaywalk more. And why do less people get injured when they jaywalk? Well, the idea is you're actually much more keenly aware of what's around you. You are taking more risks, but you're doing it in a calculated way. You're looking around, you're observant of things around you. And to me, it really struck me as I tried to do my best with my company and my other two colleagues to lead change as best we can, that jaywalking is what this industry needs to do more of. And I hope that kind of is a theme for you as you think about the things we're going to present to you today, that as an industry, let's think about jaywalking more. It's probably more safe in the long run, probably better for us in the long run as an industry, but it's harder. You know, it's easier to keep the status quo. So with that, one other thing I wanted to say about change and about innovation. I hear colleagues say oftentimes, and you may have thought this, you know, everybody's talking about innovation, I get it, and I see all these innovations, but has it really affected our industry in a very big way yet? And I think it might be fair to say that it's affected it, but you haven't maybe felt it as strongly as you might. And what I would suggest to you is we're right at the cusp of a pretty much of an exponential increase in change and how innovation will affect that change. So if you're sitting there saying, yes, I hear all this talk about innovation, you're here sitting in the room, you're interested in it, but I haven't really felt it myself in my practice, I'm here to tell you that those who prognosticate about our profession, who prognosticate about business in general, are telling us that we're right at the cusp, you know, perhaps somewhere right here, where we're just getting ready to see a fairly exponential change. Now's the time. Now's the time we need to adapt, jaywalk a little more, but do it in a calculated way in order to make the right changes for our industry and where it needs to go. So, I kind of like this quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it, and that's what I think we need to do, and hopefully we'll give you some ideas today on things you can do tomorrow. So, question for you, AI. So if I say AI to an audience like this, what does that mean to you? Anybody? Okay, fantastic. So I've talked about this in several audiences, and I won't say who they are, and I say AI, and I get a lot of blank stares, but you know, so AI, artificial intelligence, yes, so why is this relevant to us? And I just, you know, have some things here I wanted to show you, but I just want to tell you that I would expect to see artificial intelligence have a very major impact on our industry over the next 10 to 15 years. Think about it for a minute, what AI can bring. What basically AI can bring is everything you learned from the first day you walked into, whether it be optometry school, opticianry school, whatever it may be, till about 10 seconds ago, the latest report, the latest survey, the latest research that was just published within the past 10 minutes, and if you could have at your fingertips, all of that information that you could utilize in order to make the good decisions about your patients. Would that change how you operate? Would that affect outcomes? Because we know today, and as we look in the future, as we look at managed healthcare, outcomes become a pretty important factor on our pocketbook as well as our patients. So what about AI? What impact will it have on us? Will it ever have an impact? I'm telling you today that it already has an impact on you. There's a company out there called AI Cure. They're trying at the cusp of it. What they do today is they match facial recognition to a medication. So you want to make sure your patient's taking the right medication. It scans their face, it scans the med, and it tells the patient whether they're taking the right medication. That's AI today. AI tomorrow will be something you'll use in your practice. And whenever I tell this, I want to add the caveat that no one expects AI to take over for you. You're not going away, and a computer is not going to take over what you do. But as a resource to you, to make sure you have every bit of information to make the best decisions you possibly can for your patients, that's a big opportunity. And I looked up just some things like AI today. You're using it and dealing with it today. You may not really know it. For me, the one that really struck me is iRobot. You have this thing at home. This is a pretty cool thing, right? So it goes around your house. It learns the pattern of your house. It learns where more of the crumbs tend to be. For me, I watch football, I eat pretzels, right? So it kind of hovers around me all day, pretty much. It is knowledgeable in that after it learns the layout of your house, it stops kind of banging into things after a while. So it has an intelligence factor. It's a simple example, but I'm just trying to tell you, Siri, what is the other one that I'm an Apple guy, so Cortana. These are examples of AI. They're out there today, and they will affect our profession, and I share that with you because I want you to think about that, think about how it would impact you, think about how would you utilize it in a manner that could be really positive and effective for you. Self-driving cars and some of the other things you know about. I'm not a big Jeopardy watcher, but I think you've heard the story about the computer beating the best Jeopardy player out there, etc. These things are intelligent and could really make a difference and are coming to healthcare, are coming to our space, there's no question. Seen this before? Oculus Rift, so little story behind this. I believe virtual reality will change what we do in the next 5 to 10 years. I believe phoropter goes away. I believe that your exam rooms will look very different. I believe your exam rooms will have a virtual reality stand if you've not seen one of them, and most of us don't have a lot of experience with virtual reality. It's either arcade games, flight simulators, and military ops simulations. So unless you're in that category, you probably haven't engaged with virtual reality very much. But basically what you have is a little stand that you lean up against because you're immersed in another world, and therefore you can lose your balance a little bit. And basically, if Miss Jones comes in and she drives the kids to work, she plays tennis, and she works on a computer, then we'll immerse her in that environment, and we'll assess her visual performance in that environment. No more perfectly contrasted chart in a perfectly illuminated room, read 5 letters, we pat you on the back and send you on your way and say you're good to go. It's just not good enough. It won't be good enough in the future. And I would predict to you virtual reality will make a very big difference in how you evaluate patients. And for us, in the spectacle lens side, a pretty big difference as well. By the way, this little device was bought by a little company called Facebook, you may have heard of, for $2 billion. So that's the B word, that's $2 billion. Some smart people believe there's some future to this little virtual reality device. There's a lot of future to it, and it will affect you, I believe, in the not too distant future. Last thing I just wanted to touch on here was acuity. That's kind of been my little mantra for the past several years. And something I want to get you thinking about when you walk out of here today. Snellen acuity chart, this chart right here, used around the world. 99.9% of our colleagues use Snellen acuity. When was the Snellen acuity chart first developed? Who first started using it? It wasn't Kirk, by the way. Sorry, Kirk, I had to do that. I'll never be invited back again. So ideas, historians in the room, when was the first Snellen acuity chart first developed? You know? Hearing something? So. Let's say mid-1800s. We're going to say 150 plus years ago, Snellen acuity chart developed. More importantly to me, though, by the way, still using it today, 150 years later, but more importantly to me, when was 20/20 as the standard by which we hold our patients to normal vision? When do you think that was established? And I'll cut right to the chase. It was established at the same time. So today, when you assess your patient's visual performance, you're holding them to a standard that was established in the mid-1800s. This is where I pause and let you aggregate that in your brain for a minute. I mean, let's just think about this. The demands on the human visual system, if you'll give me this, the demands on the human visual system have changed a bit in the past 150 years. Good? We good with that? Usually I get you coming around with me on that one. Okay. Therefore, I'm going to suggest to you it's not good enough. Last question, what can the human visual system achieve? Perfect macula, perfect amount of cones in the macula, a beautiful system, a 14-year-old. Now, what can, in Snellen acuity, the human visual system achieve? Do you know? Somebody knows. Lots of people know. Okay. 20/8 is probably the best the human visual system can achieve. That's quite a bit better than 20/20. Today, you're normalizing vision to a normalization that was established in the mid-1800s. Colleagues, I believe we can do better than that. I believe we should optimize the way people see. We should push people to the limits of what they can achieve. And if we don't do it, other people are going to. Other people are going to tell people they can give them better than 20/20 vision by doing an eye exam online, perhaps. So we need to think about that and think about, do we think the standard of what was established in the mid-1800s is still good enough today? I hope you walk out of here thinking a little bit about that. I hope you walk out of here thinking a little bit about challenging that. And I hope you walk out of here thinking a little about jaywalking, but I don't recommend that on the Las Vegas Strip. So just for the record, I don't want to be responsible for any injuries. So last thing, I'm probably out of time, so I'm just going to cover this very quickly. E-commerce. An important aspect for our future. Omnichannel to me is the future, and you sit in a perfect position to control that. Why? You have bricks and mortar, and you can offer an e-commerce solution. 7 years ago, we started talking about this, and we saw people coming into this space, the Warby Parkers of the world, the Coastals of the world, and they said they would never open up a single brick and mortar store. They wanted to be a pure virtual play. What's happening today? You know what's happening today. They're opening on brick and mortar because the consumer, you, and the people like us, are demanding somewhere to go so that someone can adjust, can help them, can engage with them. We thought we were worried about showrooming, someone coming in, asking for measurements, leaving and going to buy online, and candidly, colleagues, what's happening is the opposite. Reverse showrooming, or something called web rooming. What's happening, and you do it every day. You want to be more knowledgeable before you go in and purchase something, so you go online, you peruse, you learn more, you narrow down your selection, and then you walk into a brick and mortar store and you buy. Without going into a lot of detail on the subject, because I could, I will just tell you that's what's happening in our space, and you as independent practitioners sit in a perfect position to own this space. The primary problem is it's emotional, and we wish it didn't exist, and we wish, as Essilor wishes, that every patient sat across a table and was dispensed by a master optician. But that's not the way of the world today. And I ask you to consider embracing some of this technology. Let's jaywalk a little more. Let's take the calculated risks that move our profession forward. Let's not use standards that were established in the mid-1800s. And we as an industry on the spectacle side, you will see major advancements from us. And I'll leave you with one last thought. Quarter diopter increments aren't good enough. You need to demand more specific, more precise, more precision out of the laboratories that you work with, be they contact lens or spectacle lens. And I believe you'll see that. So I hope I've given you a couple things to think about. I'm gonna warm up back for the real stars, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts, and I wish you a great rest of your meeting. Thanks. Thanks, Kirk.
Well, I guess I owe him one now for that comment, don't I?
Yes.
Pretty close, though, to being one of the first, probably. So next we have Holly Rush. Many of you know Holly. She's president of Luxottica. And I can tell you that I became involved with Luxottica several years ago. I'm one of the people that threw him out of the office, by the way. How long ago was that? 15? You weren't even there then. But I'm one of the people, many of you know what I'm talking about. I've since reintroduced them to my office and my patients several years ago. And I couldn't live without the branding. I mean, it's made such a difference in my bottom line. Because of Holly, I spent several $100,000 completely redoing my optical dispensary, calling out different names of designers, and my patients just walk right over to whoever their favorite designer is. And I told you, Holly, that our average sale price went up about $38 immediately after we did that. So it'll take a few years to get it back, but even at that rate, but we will. So Holly and Luxottica is doing a lot to change the face of what's going on. Holly, come on and tell us about it.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, how's everyone doing? Good? I don't know, Howard got a better good afternoon than I did. Can we try again? Good afternoon, everyone. I think everyone's tired just watching Howard. I was joking up here that it's a little bit like watching the US Open. The energy level, wow, incredible. And I always have to follow you too, it's not fair. Kirk, next time I go first, just for the record, okay? So really happy to be here with all of you today and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about something that I'm super passionate about, and that is the consumer. And I think you already heard from Howard today some of the themes that will be reinforced in my presentation, my time with you. So very happy to be with you. I am the president of Luxottica Wholesale North America, and I just want to take a minute just to point that out because I get a lot of questions about what exactly it is that I do and whether or not I have anything to do with the Luxottica retail division. And what I want you to know, and the reason why I'm here is because the nearly 800 people that are part of my organization in Wholesale North America wake up every day with a single purpose in mind, and that is to serve you and to grow the market. So we are exclusively dedicated to really working towards growth and sustainability across the optical market. So very little to do with the retail side of the business and everything to do with the world that you operate every day. So just a little introduction about myself. Last but not least, I still consider myself a bit of a newbie to the industry. So Kirk didn't share with you, but again, I'm still learning, as I know a lot of us that are new to the industry are. There's a lot to learn. I spent about 20 years of my career prior to coming to optical and Luxottica in the consumer goods industry, working for companies like Duracell, Gillette, and most recently L'Oreal. So I hope that I'm equally qualified to talk to you today about consumers, consumer branding, and the retail shifts that we see out there and why it's relevant to this industry. Sound good? All right, fantastic. So I want to start with something that Howard already teed up, which is all this, this other C word, which is change. And really it's all around us. I've been here now at Vision Expo for not more than 24 hours. And I can't tell you, as I'm sure all of you have had, all of the conversations seem to start with this theme of change and how fast it's accelerating. It's that curve that Howard was talking about before. And these are just some of the examples of what everyone is talking about, whether it's market consolidation, healthcare reform, digital, online technologies, and the disruptors. We already heard Warby Parker as well mentioned. What I would argue is that behind these forces of change that we're dealing with is one fundamental shift, and that is a consumer shift. Because a lot of what's happening here on this screen that you're looking at is caused from an unmet need being filled. And that creates a disruption and a change in the environment in which we're competing at. And for us, I think it really comes back to what the consumer is asking for and looking for in our industry. And if this doesn't convince you enough, I want to share with you a quote that was in the Time Magazine Health issue. It's a two-part series, ran earlier in 2015 in March, and it's a quote from the CEO of CVS, Larry Merlo. I'll give you a second just to read that. It's pretty quick. And reinforce some of the main points here, because I think it really spells out what we're talking about, that our changing system will lead to the retailization of healthcare, which is really just a fancy way of saying that patients are becoming more like consumers and healthcare is becoming more like any other consumer products. So that's a pretty powerful quote from the CEO of an 8,000-door drugstore chain, which is already in the medical space. So these are the things that are disrupting the space that we're in. And again, at the center of what Larry is saying here is the consumer. Everybody good so far? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about this changing consumer and what's happened here over the last few decades. And I love this example. I particularly like the two pictures that are up here because it speaks to what the world we lived in 20 or 30 years ago was like, something that is commonly referred to as the golden age, and the world that we're living in right now, the digital age. And what's really changed? And at the core of this is this sort of shift in power. 20, 30 years ago, the seller in any buyer-seller relationship was the one with all the power. Why? Because they had all the information. What about now in the digital age? Who has all the power today? The buyer, right? And why? Because of the digital revolution, because of the information age. We have all the information we need at our fingertips at the click of a button at any time. Our consumers are uber informed, ultra connected, and they have really high expectations from any industry, any service, any goods that they interact with. And the best example I would share with you here, just ask a quick question. How many people have bought a car in the last, let's say, 3 years? So maybe like 60% of the rooms. How many people bought a car 20 years ago? I did. Showing my age now. What a difference 20 years makes in car buying. Think about it. 20 years ago, you would decide you needed a new car, and what did you do? You looked around, you thought, okay, maybe I want a Ford, maybe a Honda, a Toyota, and you decided to visit a car dealer's lot, right? And you were pretty much at the mercy of the car dealer for the inventory they had available, the color, the features, and by the way, they pretty much dictated the price you were gonna pay in the back room. Does that sound familiar to anybody? You're gonna see a lot of shaking heads. What about now? I've bought a car in the last few years. I pretty much designed the car that I wanted. I knew the lot that it was on. I knew the rebates available, and I knew the best possible price I could get that car for before I ever stepped foot on the car dealer's lot. That's happening in optical as well today. And these are the shifts, again, that really should provoke us to really thinking differently about changing the language and how we define this great industry that we're in. That it's no longer enough just to think about medical, we have to think about retail as well. And it's no longer enough to define the patient and their needs. It's mandatory to think about the consumer and what he or she wants. Okay? So lots to think about already, but hopefully the thing that gets you thinking the most is the real value creation and thinking more like consumers and what they need from us. You've heard a lot of statistics, about where eye exams are done, predominantly in ECP's offices, about 70% of them. But what about retail transactions? Less than 50% done in an eye doctor's office. That's a gap that's worth $3.5 billion to independent eye care professionals. $3.5 billion. And what about improving the overall premium experience of buying eyewear in the dispensary? Selling premium sunglasses instead of having a patient walk out and buy them from a department stores or from the vendor on the street corner. This as well, $3.8 billion of opportunity for the marketplace. What does this mean for you? If you do the math, this equates to $200,000 of revenue per door in this market. $200,000 of upside potential. And all of what sits here in the palm of your hands is to just think about your business as a retailer as well as a medical professional and to put the consumer at the center of everything that you do. Okay? So where are we today? I want to just quickly take you through what consumers say about the optical industry and then take you on a little bit of a journey, a 5-step journey on what you can do about this, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. And a lot of people in the optical industry went to school to be medical professionals, not to be marketers or merchandisers or CEOs. So we're here to help. First, I want to start with some really, really good news, which is what do your patients think about coming to see you in practice? And this is where we score exponentially high. Patients view you as a loyal, trusted, high-quality service provider. And that's the most important place that we can start from, because everything can be built from there. But what about their perception of optical? I think here we have a very, very different consumer point of view. And here we're not just competing with the eye doctor down the street or the big box retailer who sells eyeglasses. We're competing with the Starbucks and the Apples of the world and the Sephoras and the H&Ms and the Nordstroms that are also just down the street. And consumers today tell us that the whole eyewear buying experience is just flat out overwhelming. It's hard to shop in an optical dispensary. They can't find what they're looking for. They're flat out overwhelmed. They don't know what they're going to pay for the final pair because pricing isn't transparent, and the whole process just takes an awfully long time. So this is really the piece, again, that thinks and really focuses on what the consumer wants and needs are. So now that we've sort of laid the groundwork for where we are today, it's really about where we go from here in the future. And what I'd like to share with you today is not necessarily things that we've seen out there, but more so best practices from other industries that we can draw reference from here in the optical space. And it really hits on 5 main points. The first point is the art of retailing, which is really more the emotional side of things. The second point is the science of retailing, which is a really important part of the equation. The third is staff and culture. The fourth is something that Howard mentioned earlier, which is omni-channel marketing. And the fifth is you and your involvement in putting this first as a priority for your business. So we start with the art of retailing. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. And we've used inspiration here from IKEA. How many people have been to an IKEA before? So you've probably spent most of a Saturday afternoon there, like a lot of their consumers do. Did you know that the average time an IKEA shopper spends in the store? Yes. How long do they spend on average?
Forever.
3 hours. 3 hours. And the heavy shoppers spend 8. Think about that, 8 hours in an IKEA. Why? Because they've designed the entire store around the consumer journey and the consumer needs. They've shown you things that you didn't even know you wanted or needed. You went there thinking you were going to renovate your kitchen, and you walked out adding a guest room where you have a home study. This is what they do. They create the need for you, and they've designed everything with that consumer in mind. Another important theory that they use as they approach their retail design is this idea of not just creating a space, 4 walls that hold things, but a place that evokes energy and emotion, because that's where loyalty lies. And they know that if they get a consumer to spend the time there, they're also spending more than their fair share of their discretionary dollars there as well. And that's why they're winning from a home furnishing retail standpoint. The other interesting point there as well that I think is really relevant, and again, Howard touched on this earlier and we didn't coordinate our messages, is this idea that consumers today still want a physical retail environment to shop in. They might scan the online space, but 90% of consumers will visit a physical store before they make a purchase. So that place that you have is really, really, really important to creating that need and that desire. It can't be ignored, and it's why Warby Parker is opening physical locations, because they've learned that quickly. So this is the art of retailing. It's about emotion and energy. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, so now we'll move on to the science, because it really is a blend of art and science. And the devil is in the details here. If you think about an example, a retailer like Sephora, just to give you an example, it's all about having the right assortment, 15,000 SKUs, by the way, in the Sephora store, 15,000. We manage about 1,000 in the optical dispensary, at the right price and the right time. Why? Because they know that 8 out of 10 shoppers will leave the store or change brands if they don't have what the consumer wants in that moment. And the way you get here is by using the science, the technology, point of sale systems, reporting that tell you what your consumers and patients want. It's a really critical piece of the buying process to take emotion out of it and go with the logic and the reason. That's exactly what Sephora has done. Next is the ladies and gentlemen of Ritz-Carlton. So I hope that all of you have this on your bucket list or have checked it off already to actually experience what it's like to be a guest in their environment. Because these people wrote the book on service and creating a culture, a mindset around service, empowering your staff, hiring talent that embodies service, making them accountable for that, rewarding and recognizing staff that goes above and beyond. And this is important from the front desk, through the exam lane, through the optical dispensary. I think we have to ask ourselves, do we treat our patients like the Ritz-Carlton treats their guests? Do they have a VIP experience when they come to see us? Do we anticipate their needs? These are the kinds of things that we need to import into our industry to ensure that, again, we're capturing that opportunity. Point number 4, a big word called omni-channeling, and this is a pretty complex term, but with, I think, a relatively simple explanation. It's really about putting the consumer in the middle of everything that you do and ensuring that every one of your touch points, whether it's digital or physical, tell the same story, that surround them with the same message. So whether it's an e-commerce or website that says something about your practice, or like Burberry here, which is really a best-in-class example, blending digital technology into the store environment, this is an expectation now of consumers, that they will be engaged and energized And the sensory component of the shopping experience is there regardless of where they're shopping. And these things are relatively easy to do. A simple, TV screen with a loop video from your manufacturers or about your practice is one great place to start. Or a tablet that your associates use to check availability of stock online or to use for education purposes. There's lots of very easy ways to do what we're showing here. The last and final place, and then I'll wrap up, is really where this all rests, and that is with you. Whether you're the practice owner or the chief medical officer and doctor in the practice, you have to own this every bit as much as you own the quality of care. If 50% or more of your revenues happen in the front half of your business, you cannot ignore the consumer who is in your practice and what they're looking for. Because if we continue to ignore it, that gap that we talked about before, it gets bigger. And those disruptors can create more noise and more opportunity to take our business from us in practice. And last but not least, I want to end with where I started, which is why I'm here today, which is ultimately to provide the support and the tools to help you be successful in your practice. It's why we come to Vision Expo, for example. It's why we're working with the Think About Your Eyes team to create consumer awareness for the category. It's why we're providing CE education credits in our booth on this very subject. And it's why we're bringing tools to the market to help you succeed. That's all for me today. I thank you for listening, and I think we're on to our first speaker.
Thank you very much, Holly. I had the opportunity to have a lovely bottle of Sangiovese with Holly in Venice, Italy. I had a wonderful Bordeaux with Howard in Paris, France. Ripple in New Jersey. We got to up the game.
The guidelines that we follow.
Or the guidelines. See, that's why I love the optical. Rob is Vice President of Medical Relations at Bausch & Lomb, and I just have to tell you that there was a time, and I know I saw Cal Roberts here someplace. He was just here a minute ago. Oh, there he is in the back. And we appreciate your being here, Cal, as the Chief Medical Officer at Bausch & Lomb, an ophthalmologist who really appreciates optometry, and we appreciate everything he does for us. There was a time when Bausch & Lomb has always been a great partner of optometry in the vision world. But in the pharma world, that wasn't always the case. And in the last several years, one person has been responsible for bringing optometry into Bausch & Lomb pharma world, and that person is Rob Meyering. He's become a very close friend with so many optometrists. He really gets it. And now when I see the numbers of what optometry is contributing to the pharma world in Bausch & Lomb, it's incredible. I'm so proud of my profession, so welcome.
Thank you very much. So the first thing I have to decide here is I saw Howard walking back and forth, and I saw Holly standing here, and I thought maybe I'll just walk up and down the stairs in a circle, and that way I cut the difference in half. Well, first of all, thank you, Kirk, for the kind words. When Kirk asked me to talk to the group here today, I said, what would you like me to say? What would you like me to talk about? And he said, well, why don't you talk about how prescription trends, all those years of optometry is doing more and more in this space, and just share that and tell them what they're going to do in the future. That'd be great. And I thought, oh yeah, perfect. Right after lunch, that will put everybody to sleep, so I better not do that. But it did get me thinking a little bit about a story, and the story was reinforced when Howard, I was watching one of his videos, and I think it was about optometry at the time, as a futurist, and he said, all futurists, good futurists, are good historians. So I said, well, I've never really told this story, and it was kind of fun going back and putting these slides together. So the story I'm going to share with you is in the mode of futurist as historian. So you've got to suffer through a little bit of history, but I think you'll see where I'm going with this. And it's certainly a story of patience and persistence, and there's also all sorts of examples of professionalism and great progress. And it actually goes back quite a way. So just by way of introduction, just like Holly said, I am actually not an optometrist. I've started my career in the marketing field with big pharmaceuticals, Bristol Labs, Leverly Labs, Wyeth, and it wasn't until early 1992 which actually is quite a long ways ago, 35 years almost now, that I started to be involved in the eye care industry. And at that time, I was asked to move from New Jersey out to St. Louis, Missouri, and learn the medical device business. At that time, we had IOLs, surgical instruments, but also the real primary goal was to build an ophthalmic pharmaceutical company. So I said, okay, well, let's tackle that challenge, and this is what I had to work with. Now, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember, but Nemtazane and Diamox are both oral products, and Revise was a in-office reversal of dilation drops that wasn't reimbursed, so you would have to pay for something, and I couldn't help you with that. You'd have to figure out how to cover that cost. But the reality is Nemtazane and Diamox were both literally diuretic products that were introduced in the 50s. So not far back as that Snellen from 1860, but you know, these were a little bit old. But I also had another product that was coming to market at that time. It was a product called Ocuvite, and that product you know, was basically something we could do at Storz Ophthalmics because we were the sister division of Letterly Laboratories. Now, I don't know how many of you remember the name Letterly, but I'm sure you all know the name Centrum. I'm sure you heard the name Palgrate, Stress Tabs. It's all made by the same company. So all of these products were all being manufactured. We know how to make vitamins. So, you know, when David Newsom started looking into the research on zinc deficiencies and AMD, that really got us started to think about, well, wait a minute, there might be an opportunity here since there wasn't anything else anti-VEGF drugs, you know, any other opportunities out there to try to involve with this, and we embarked on this product, and we ended up in a little collaboration with the NEI known as the AREDS trial. So that was really the start of that. But you know, my task, as I mentioned, was to build the pharmaceutical business. So how do you do that? Well, you know, I go back to my marketing MBA, and I said, well, there's 4 Ps whenever you think about how do you grow something, and you think about, do you get some new products? You think about raising your price, you think about the type of promotion you're doing or who you're doing it to, you think about your distribution. And the reality is I wasn't going to get a new product pipeline. I was already dealing with 30-year-old drugs. The price was already pretty high. Certainly there was enough retailers out there already. So there was only one opportunity, and that was promotion, the target audience. So that's where I had to go to build a business. And I said, well, how do you get more sales? How do you get more prescriptions? More users. So who do we go to? Well, you know, I happened to live in St. Louis, Missouri at the time, Storz Ophthalmics, and right there on Lindbergh Avenue is a place called the American Optometric Association. So, well, that played a little bit of a role. And then there was an optometrist by the name of Frank Fontaine. I think most of you probably heard that name before. Frank was very good about you know, bringing people into the industry, and I was very new at that time. So Uncle Frank, as he soon became known, was the next one who was encouraging us to, you know, try to get a topical drug route. That would be really good for an ophthalmic product. I said, yeah, I got it, Frank. I know we're trying. And then the pièce de résistance was when my boss, who was single at the time, started to date a very attractive and energetic young optometrist. And I said, I think I know what audience we're going to go to. So it was optometry. And you know, the interesting thing at this time, this was 1990, 1992, around that time frame. There were only 30 states at 1992. I went back and looked in the books. 30 states that allowed for therapeutic prescribing back then. Therapeutic and diagnostic, I should say. It wasn't just therapeutic. So, you know, we weren't sure about that. We also had a big business at Storz with ophthalmology, and we knew that there could be some potential pushback there if we started talking to optometrists. But I had an advantage. And truthfully, that was where my prior background with Bristol and Letterly in the RX side was. I had seen how MD had interacted with DO, osteopaths, and it wasn't necessarily always positive, but then it got better and it was fine. And then I saw how MDs originally reacted with physician assistants, and they got the right to prescribe. And then I saw how nurse practitioners did the same, and it all became nothing more than supply and demand. We needed people to treat, we needed people to write, and that was what happened. So, using the language of today, we pivoted to optometry, and that was you know, where it all ended up. And this was an ad, one of the early ads that we ran at Storz Ophthalmics, which was the precursor to B&L, where, you know, Ocuvite, 76% of optometrists. And we got a little bit of pushback, on what, what are you doing going to optometry? Well, we started, and then we also had an optometric instrument added, which I found in the archives. I don't even remember doing this one, but we had done this way back when, and we were talking about this and trying to engage with you all in a way that had not historically been done. And then we happened upon this little vehicle. This was something that perhaps had as much impact as anything we did, and that was to find some good optometrists to work with. And in this case, it was Randall Thomas and Ron Melton, and support education. So, this drug guide, this annual drug guide, we started supporting, and see on the left, that was 1993. That was the third. I couldn't find the first or the second, so I don't know where that is. But and then in 1996, it shifted over to Review of Optometry, and I'll be honest with you, we have sponsored it every year since. So from 1993, till today, we continue to support education, and obviously it's their thoughts, their opinions, and they do a spectacular job. But I think that is again an attribute of persistence and professionalism, and paid off. So, how did all this work? Well, we actually ended up getting acquired by a company called American Home Products. So that's great. And they had a couple of different companies, Wyeth, Ayers, Whitehall. I see my colleague Ray Lauer out there. I think he was employed by half of those companies out there at one point. But as it turns out, I heard they had some ophthalmic products. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Now I can build this business at stores much easier because I got bought. And what they gave me was something that was older than Diamox and Neptazine. Possibly an iodide, Lord, I don't know how many people even know, what that is anymore. Collyrium, Fluorostrips, those latter two were still around. Updated packaging a little bit. And Kirk, I have to ask, turn of the century, you remember any of those packages? I don't know. I'm just wondering. These are great shots. So, we didn't actually have a robust portfolio there either to build a portfolio. But again, we go back to these sorts of messages, and in comes Bausch and Lomb. And they buy both Stores Ophthalmics and Chiron Vision. Two surgical players. They created B&L Surgical. And what they said was, okay, but we still want to build a pharmaceutical business. So I said, fantastic, this is a great opportunity. I've got even more products. Bausch & Lomb, of course, knows everything about optometry. They've been, famous for their contact lenses and lens care forever. So I can't wait to see. And I know they have a new manufacturing plant. This is going to be great. And what I discovered was that they actually had products like Prolom, Optipranolol, and Miro, which are, again, stalwarts in the industry at the time, and not necessarily high-growth products. So we were fortunate. We were fortunate because shortly after they made that acquisition, there was this new chemical entity, and it had two products to launch, a new sales force, and really, in our case, it was 1998, and we ended up having access to these two drugs, which, if there were ever any drugs that were ideal for those subspecialties that are new to prescribing, a product like this, a steroid, which has a significant side effect profile difference, in fact proven by one of your colleagues by the name of Jimmy Bartlett. That was something that we were very excited about, and we did some pretty cool stuff with that. And obviously that portfolio is expanded. Today it includes ointments and gels, Xylit as well. And once you get some momentum going and you build some revenue, you can also buy and acquire other products. And so here we are with a vastly different portfolio today. Still have some products that we bought and acquired from others, but they're now all under the B&L portfolio, and it's been great. So now I want to shift actually though to so how do I know any of this had anything to do with optometry? And this is really where Kirk had asked me to talk about. And there's a thing called TRX, it's Total Prescriptions. It's provided by a third-party gate provider called IMS. They also provided sales dollars and units. And I went back to 1991 to see what IMS said was the market for glaucoma drugs, for instance. And back then, it was a whopping 382 million, of which 57 came from Diamox and Neptazine, 325 from topicals. The big ones were the beta blockers, you can see, Optic, Betacan, Optipranolol, that was our big new drug at B&L, 1 million. And 95% of all TRXs for glaucoma, 95% came from ophthalmology. None whatsoever they could find from optometry. Anti-infectives was a little bit different, 145 million back then. 91, the top seller was Tobrax, followed by Tobradex, 16 million. Polytrim showed extraordinary growth, which was funny to characterize that way up to 5 million. And Siloxane was the first fluoroquinolone launched, right after Chevroxin had launched, shortly thereafter. If anybody remembers Chevroxin. So all of these things were interesting, and at that time it said 23 topical antibiotics for that class, only 23 states. So I want to fast forward now 10 years later, 2003. So this is another IMS. This comes right from some marketing plans that I had. You can see under the column called ophthalmologists, so we're about 16,000 ophthalmologists writing about 4.3 million scripts of steroids, of which 580,000 were Lotemax. In optometry, about 13,000. So that's from 0 to about 13,000. But they were writing around 316,000, which again is a far cry from the 4.3 million that were being written by ophthalmology. But they were writing 316 and Lotemax 64,000. So again, a very healthy number. Alarix, similar type story, about 15,000 ophthalmologists writing 1.47 million scripts. And when you look at optometry, about 17,000 optometrists, so more there, writing 500,000 scripts, and Alarix got 50,000. I also have Optivar on here because back then we were actually co-promoting, launched a drug called Optivar, Elastic back then. So now let's forward another 10 years. So now to today. So this is the steroid market. It's about 8 million scripts. This is the 2014 numbers, and ophthalmology represents the big green blob there, and optometry is the purple wedge. And as you can see, ophthalmology is a big chunk, 3/4 of all the scripts in the market. But optometry is close to a quarter, which is a terrific number. NSAID, not so much. We don't have as much business coming from optometry in the NSAID market. I think that's primarily a lot of post-op use with post-cataract, and so that's why we see that change. Anti-infective fluoroquinolone, again, a big chunk comes from optometry, but we also get a lot from the pediatricians and GPs. So you can see that the two blue segments are both, kind of primary care, and about 9 million scripts there. So this is all implications for where would you want to deploy your people and your knowledge and your resources. And when you start getting into products like combination steroid anti-infective, this would be where we have the Tobradex and the Xylem markets. You would see a significant difference. Now it's starting to get a little bit bigger, 35% to 31%. Almost ophthalmology, optometry, almost right about the same. And when you look at allergy, again, you get a bigger part coming from allergists and peds and non-eye care, but it's about half the market is eye care, non-eye care. And then the last one I'm going to share with you is glaucoma. And if you look at the bottom, that's 15 million scripts. So that's about twice the size of any other market that I just shared with you that we compete in. So it's amazing, not only the size of the market, but the size that optometry represents and how that has grown, where I think I mentioned to you back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was 0. Now you're up to, what was that, I think maybe that 12, 18% as a share. So it's a tremendous story, and this is a market that we continue to be interested in. Looking forward to do more with in the near future. So what will the future hold? That was kind of the whole purpose of the talk, and I want to go back to the historian, futurist model that Howard set up for us, and that was that I hopefully showed you that optometry prescribing has come a huge way from where it was just 30 years ago. The way you practice is totally different in the fact that these scripts are out there, and from the Bausch and Lomb standpoint, where we have both medical devices and pharmaceuticals, we're looking at optometry and we're seeing how trends are emerging, and how what used to be a refractive exam is now an exam where we can optimize vision, whether that's treating underlying disease or having an accurate refraction. All of that is coming together in a way with an expanded baby boomer audience that really, really compelling. And you know, certainly our work is nowhere near done. I mean, there's large chunks of business. I have additional data showing how B&L compares with all these others, and it is fascinating how different products get different percentages in different groups depending on what happens. But it is a story that goes back 30 years. We did not just get into this market. Stores and B&L have been focused on optometry for 30 years. And when I say what's the future, what does B&L think? Well, it's still the same. It's a story in progress. We're still going forward. And on behalf of all my colleagues, I want to thank everybody for their support, all their hard work, and thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. We have time for a couple of questions. I can't see real well because of the bright lights, but who's got a question that wants to know where we're headed and what these people? Yes, sir, in the white shirt.
For Ali and Luxottica, can you supply us with digital marketing that we can put up in the optical that will help brand and point out the brands you mentioned?
Son, you guys can hear me okay? Absolutely, and I think all of the major manufacturers can today. I mean, when we think about marketing, we have to think 360 and designing the types of tools, whether it's an in-store display or, as you said, sort of a digital image or a video loop, in order to enable you to do exactly what we're saying you need to do. So 100%.
That's an excellent question. We need all the help and support we can get, that's for sure. Someone else?
While you're thinking about that question, I would just also add from the spectacle lens side, that's something we can provide too. So whether you're looking to have better demonstrations around the frame lens, we kind of need each other, whether Holly tries to escape me or not. There's got to be some lens in there to help you to see well too. So working together, we can make it happen.
And I saw at this meeting a year or two ago, Transitions, which you now own, 100% of, had a video screen, a flat one like a huge desk here, where a patient could go and pull up different scenarios as to what lens would be good for them. That would be ideal in my practice. I don't know what happened to that, but if it's in the closet someplace, I'll be glad to pick it up.
It's not in the closet. It is something we continue to test and look at. The challenge for us is what time gets spent on selecting lenses. I think the fashion side is amazing, and I think it's an important part of it. But what time do we spend and what time are we willing to spend on discussing lenses is a challenge. So continuing to find vehicles like the one you mentioned to be able to make it easy and appropriate to demonstrate some of the value in lenses is a continuous effort for us, and we'll continue to work with you to try to find the best answers.
And Rob, you mentioned pharma guidelines earlier. Life is a pendulum. I mean, we wear wide ties and we wear narrow ties. We have wide belts and then skinny belts.
You're still not getting that bottle line.
The ripple was fine. So what do you think? Do you think all these pharma guidelines, which have put so much pressure, and it really affects us and our patients, we can't learn as much from you, we can't benefit. Do you think they're going to ever soften up in the next 10, 15 years, like a pendulum, or how's that going to play out?
Well, trying to predict what the government or its agency is going to do is never a task for the mere mortals. But I guess in some respects, there has been some interesting movement lately. There was a case of a company that went up to, I think it was Supreme Court level, challenging the right to free speech to talk about off-label use. That is a huge problem in the industry where pharma salespeople are not allowed to go anywhere off of their package inserts, which just so happens to be where most people use a lot of our drugs in ophthalmology and optometry and a lot of other allergy and other places where our drugs get used. So in our situation, we've had to adapt. We've had to create a medical team, of which I have a few colleagues here that can go out and interact with you to answer questions, but it is not part of the commercial team. I, as VP of marketing for many, many years, and am now on the medical side because cannot have those two groups talking anymore. So it is a challenge. I don't see it changing anytime in the near future, but maybe with these medical science liaisons and this other sort of organization that you can work through, we'll try to get information out.
And we now have an optometrist as an MS.
Yes, we do. We have Chris Snyder. I think he's in the room. He just joined our group.
I'm really proud of that. And Chris. So
Yeah.
That's great. Anyone else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of change, with government healthcare,
hopefully everyone pretty much understood the question. Yeah. Anyone want to comment on that, Howard?
I mean, it's a subject being debated in great detail these days. I think to predict where healthcare is going with all the change and all the disruption that's taking place is a hard thing to do. I think you make a fantastic point. To me, in the end, what's going to win is what's good for the patient, what's good for the consumer, and what you've just described seems really good for the consumer. So I think it's certainly reasonable to think that something like that could happen. I don't think it's happening overnight, but it's reasonable to think that something like that could happen.
You know, Essilor buys a new company about every week. I wouldn't be surprised. No, anyway. Anyone else?
I was just about to say how skimpy you were dressed, looking so modern, trying to make you feel younger, and you blew it.
Any other questions out there? All right, you've been a great audience. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Actually, this is a question for you, Howard. Do you see mobile technology having any kind of effect on the industry, specifically some kind of ways for consumers to be able to interact with their private care, without mobile, without having to go into the office or anything like that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard. This question's really to do with dealing with mobile and mobile applications in our profession, particularly. I don't think there's any question about it. We heard some great talks. Hopefully you've sat in on some of them even already, and the team's done a great job of bringing some of that insight here to us. The mobile is the future. The number of mobile phones people have is almost outpacing the population. If we don't pay attention to the opportunities there, we miss out. I heard some great talks on millennials, but I don't think it's limited to millennials. I think we all have phones. We all use them in every other aspect of our life. Why would we think not here? Question is what? What works? What provides value? And that's what we really have to do, is provide value. I heard someone say we have 5 apps on our phone that we use pretty much all the time. How do we get involved in those 5 apps? How do we, because we create things that don't bring a lot of value and just tertiary to it. You've got probably on your phone a lot of apps you never even open. So long answer to say absolutely, and then what we do is going to be important. Addressing issues, trying to help people understand the value of going and getting their eyes examined, what we do, and helping them select and modify and get their products is going to be an important part. And we have to embrace it. I think if any message you've heard today, I think certainly from Holly and myself, is we have to embrace that technology and understand how do we utilize what's available, something we carry around with us all the time. I think that's critically important. So it's kind of a loud question. Thank you very much for that.
Well, we have mobile eye exam centers. In fact, Howard, your company helped provide one at Southern California College of Optometry. We have mobile cataract surgery units now. So mobility is really becoming more and more important and easy.
No question about it. We have to be open-minded to how we're going to engage with it. That's the hardest part, because we're kind of our traditionalists in this profession. So jaywalk a little more. That's my message.
Well, thank you very much, audience.
All right, that was the state of the industry. Thank you for joining us.